Imagine you were driving down a Florida highway.
Okay, picture that.
Yeah. And on the passenger seat right next to you, there's just sitting $3,000 in crisp $100 bills.
Right.
And you're on the phone with your casino VIP host. And he casually informs you that you are currently down $890,000 for this trip alone.
That is just an unfathomable amount of money. Almost $1 million basically evaporated in a flash.
Yeah, I mean, most people would pull the car over, right? Like they'd throw up, they'd have a full-blown panic attack right there on the shoulder of the road.
Oh, absolutely.
But your immediate response to this news, you just say, I need 500K more.
Just actively, frantically digging the hole deeper.
Exactly. And, today we are doing a deep dive into a situation that really started with a seemingly trivial, $10,000 dispute on social media.
Which is nothing for these guys.
Right, but it violently exploded into a real-world shooting at a luxury Florida casino between two very prominent music artists. We're talking about Offset and Lil Tjay.
Yeah, and to map out the anatomy of this exact collision, we are pulling from a really massive stack of sources for you today.
We've got a lot to get through.
We really do. We've combed through leaked direct messages. We have raw transcripts of live streams, ground-level eyewitness accounts, and official police reports.
Not to mention the extensive commentary from industry insiders, right? Like DJ academics.
Exactly. Along with the deeply personal and, frankly, very frustrated accounts of Offset's wife, Cardi B.
Yeah, so our mission for this deep dive is to trace the hidden architecture of this tragedy. We want to look far beyond the sensational headlines of just, a casino brawl.
Right, we're mapping out the precise timeline of the digital beef.
Analyzing the mechanics of the actual physical altercation and really pulling apart the deeply concerning undercurrents here.
Because there are severe allegations of gambling addiction, the lethal cultural realities of underground dice games, and, historical patterns of trauma that transformed a digital argument into a physical disaster.
But before we get into that timeline, I know you wanted to put out a necessary disclaimer regarding the source material.
Yes, I do. The documents and the streams we're analyzing today, they contain highly aggressive language, severe criminal accusations, and wildly conflicting narratives from the different camps involved.
Right, it's a mess.
It is. So I want to explicitly note that our job here is strictly to analyze this material impartially. We are not validating one artist's claims over another's.
Exactly.
And we are definitely not endorsing the behavior, the lifestyle, or the violence described in these sources. We are treating this as an investigative autopsy, just looking objectively at the mechanics of the escalation, without taking sides.
Perfect. So we really have to start at the inciting incident, because the spark for this entire powder keg was a public call-out on a social media live stream by Lil Tjay.
Yeah, and the subject of that call-out was just a debt.
Right. Tjay claimed that Offset owed him money stemming from a gambling dispute. And the amount in question, as we mentioned, was roughly $10,000.
Which, in the ecosystem of mainstream chart-topping hip-hop artists, 10 grand is practically a rounding error.
It really is. It's like what they might spend on a single outfit for a music video shoot.
Right. So immediately, the logic of the situation just demands some scrutiny.
Well, yeah. If you look at the mechanics of the live stream, it becomes instantly clear that the $10,000 was merely a prop.
Oh, absolutely. The actual goal was the public dismantling of Offset's reputation.
Tjay didn't just hop online and say, Offset owes me money, tell him to pay up.
No, he delivered this incredibly granular, humiliating play-by-play of Offset's alleged behavior at the casino.
He painted this vivid picture of panic. He told his audience that Offset was completely broke on the casino floor, running around in a cold sweat.
And literally begging random bystanders for Cash App transfers.
Right. And the details of that narrative were so clearly engineered for maximum disrespect.
Let's actually look at the sequence Tjay laid out in the source stream.
Yeah, walk us through it.
So according to his story, Tjay initially offered Offset a $5,000 loan just to keep him playing.
Okay.
He claims Offset blew through that immediately. Then Tjay says he watched Offset scramble to secure a $2,000 loan from another associate.
But the detail that was clearly designed to go viral was about the random woman, right?
Yes. Tjay's claim that Offset approached a random woman in the casino, begged her for $1,000, and then thanked her by saying, quote, "Thanks, Mom."
Wow. Thanks, Mom. That specific phrase is just weaponized storytelling.
It really is. Tjay is taking Offset, who is, a globally recognized veteran of the industry, a member of the Migos.
And the man married to one of the most powerful women in music.
Exactly. And reducing him to the status of a desperate child begging for allowance from a stranger.
Yeah, and Tjay claimed that he watched Offset rack up 13 bands, so $13,000 in these desperate little microloans throughout the day.
And Tjay makes sure to contextualize this by establishing a very stark contrast.
He does. On the stream, he explicitly points out his own age, saying, mind you, I'm 23.
Right. He is framing his own youth and his liquid wealth directly against Offset's status as an older, established artist.
Tjay literally looks into the camera and says, I could never be broke like Set.
Which brings us to the actual currency being traded here. If you're listening to this, you might be wondering why a millionaire would risk his whole career over a relatively tiny amount of money.
Yeah, it makes zero sense from a traditional financial perspective.
None. But in this specific cultural ecosystem, $10,000 isn't really money, it's respect currency. It's brand equity.
Right, exactly. This isn't a high school cafeteria fight where egos are just getting bruised. This is corporate brand value.
Absolutely.
Because in the hip hop industry, an artist's perceived power, their untouchability, and their wealth, it dictates everything, from their touring security to their leverage in business negotiations.
So if a younger artist publicly broadcasts that you are broke and panicking in a casino and you do not respond, your brand equity just plummets.
Perceived weakness invites actual danger.
That dynamic creates what we can call a debt of honor.
A debt of honor.
The digital posturing creates a vacuum. And historically, a digital debt of honor of this magnitude almost always demands a physical resolution.
The retaliation becomes mandatory.
Right. And we see exactly how that retaliation was formulated in the leaked direct messages between the two of them.
Oh man, the DMs. They are chilling because of how quickly the language escalates.
Yeah, break those down.
So TJ initiates the private exchange by asking, "Where you at?" and then issues a direct physical threat. He promises to, quote, "smack the whole expletive out of you."
Which is a threat of physical domination, right? It's about humiliation.
But Offset's response bypasses the physical fighting entirely and jumps straight to lethal violence. Offset just fires back with, "I'll smoke you."
He fundamentally alters the stakes of the conversation right there.
He really does. But then Offset does something even more psychologically damaging. He weaponizes Lil TJ's own trauma against him.
Right. Offset writes, "You barely lived already."
That line is incredibly dark.
It's brutal.
Offset is directly referencing an incident from several years prior where Lil Tjay was the victim of a targeted shooting. TJ took 6 bullets. He was fighting for his life in emergency surgery. He barely survived.
And Offset is using that horrific near-death experience as a punchline.
He is essentially saying, your body has already been destroyed by bullets once. Why are you actively begging me to finish the job?
Yeah. And then Offset drops a geographic challenge stating he is currently in New York or Miami, daring TJ to come find him and settle it face to face.
So we have a perfectly constructed pressure cooker here. We have public humiliation, an attack on brand equity, lethal threats, and the weaponization of past trauma.
The digital arena has been entirely exhausted at this point.
Right. There's nowhere left for this tension to go but into the physical world.
Which brings us to a massive, glamorous public venue, the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida.
To understand the chaos that unfolded there, we have to examine the vulnerability that existed just moments before the violence broke out.
Yes, the source material includes a really haunting piece of video footage taken by a fan showing Offset right before the altercation.
That video is like a masterclass in behavioral red flags.
It really is. Offset is seen walking through the sprawling casino floor. He is looking down at his phone, visibly distracted.
But the most glaring anomaly is his isolation. There is no entourage.
None. There is no heavy security detail flanking him.
A fan approaches him with a camera, likely just wanting a quick selfie for social media, right? And Offset aggressively shuts the interaction down.
He physically waves the fan off and agitatedly says, "I'm by myself."
By vocalizing that, he is confirming his own lack of protection in a highly public, easily accessible environment.
He's annoyed by the camera because he knows his location is now compromised, but the undercurrent there is a profound sense of exposure.
So wait, let's critically examine Offset's logic here for a second.
Okay.
He is actively engaged in a highly volatile public feud where he literally just told another artist, "I'll smoke you," and challenged him to a face-to-face confrontation.
Right.
So if Offset is agitated enough to tell a random fan, "I'm by myself," because he inherently understands the danger of drawing a crowd, why on earth is he wandering the floor of a massive public casino without a specialized security detail?
Exactly. From a sheer survival standpoint, it completely defies logic.
It makes no sense.
It absolutely defies logic, and that contradiction is the central mystery we're going to unravel today. But before we diagnose the reason for his isolation, we have to look at the immediate consequences of it.
Because the timeline accelerates very rapidly here.
It does. According to eyewitness accounts and subsequent police reports, shortly after 7:00 p.m., the digital feud materialized in the valet area of the casino.
And the valet area is a transitional space. It's where people are waiting for cars, usually distracted, creating this chaotic bottleneck.
Yeah, and eyewitness reports detail that this wasn't a spontaneous one-on-one fistfight. It is described as a coordinated strike.
Witnesses claim that Lil Tjay was present and actively directed a group of his associates to attack Offset's crew.
And the detail that perfectly encapsulates the modern era of this kind of conflict is TJ's alleged physical positioning during the brawl.
Oh, this part is wild.
Eyewitnesses state that TJ intentionally stood back, safely removed from the immediate physical danger, and pulled out his smartphone to film the chaos as his group descended on Offset.
That detail is just staggering. Even in the exact moment of a violent, potentially lethal physical confrontation, the primary objective was still content creation.
Yes. The goal wasn't just to win a fight, it was to capture the ultimate visual proof of disrespect to broadcast to the digital audience.
The very audience that demanded the confrontation in the first place.
Exactly. But the inherent flaw in orchestrating a physical mob attack is the complete loss of control.
You cannot dictate the ceiling of the escalation once the violence initiates.
And the ceiling was reached almost immediately. Amidst the melee, someone allegedly from Lil TJ's camp produced a firearm, and Offset was shot.
The aftermath was pure pandemonium. The casino valet literally turned into a crime scene. Offset was struck and went down.
He was immediately transported to Memorial Regional Hospital. And thankfully, according to the sources, the injuries were non-life-threatening, and he was quickly reported as stable.
But the law enforcement response was massive and rapid. Seminole County Police locked down the Hard Rock, securing the perimeter and ensuring there was no ongoing active shooter threat to the thousands of civilians inside.
And their focus immediately shifted to the orchestrators. Shortly after the shooting, Lil Tjay was apprehended and taken into custody.
Now, we need to be incredibly precise regarding the legal mechanics here based on the police reports and the statements we have.
Right, let's clarify this.
Lil Tjay was not directly charged with pulling the trigger of the weapon that struck Offset.
No, he wasn't. However, law enforcement deemed his involvement in the orchestration and the instigation of the event significant enough to warrant his arrest at the scene.
Which, as you'd expect, prompted an immediate and aggressive defensive campaign from his legal representation.
Yeah, TJ's lawyer released statements vehemently pushing back against the online rumors. They explicitly clarified that TJ was not facing any shooting charges and framed the circulating narratives as entirely false.
And legally, that distinction between instigating a brawl and firing a weapon is the difference between months and decades in prison.
Huge difference.
But in the court of public opinion, the damage was calcified. The narrative of the $10,000 debt culminating in a casino shooting was cemented.
But if we stop the analysis here, we're really just gawking at a headline.
Right. To truly understand this event, we have to answer the question I posed earlier. Why was Offset, a man with known enemies and a massive net worth, walking through a public casino completely alone?
To answer that, we have to look past the feud itself and look at the venue.
The casino.
We have to view the casino not as a luxury resort, but as a psychological trap, because the source material points overwhelmingly to a deeply concerning underlying anchor. Offset is battling a severe, overwhelming gambling addiction.
DJ Academics mentioned it in his streams. The digital rumor mill constantly referenced it, but the most clinical, heartbreaking confirmation comes directly from inside Offset's own home, via his wife, Cardi B.
Yeah, the sources include transcripts of her reacting to this exact situation, and the frustration radiating from her words is profound.
While her husband was lying in a hospital bed recovering from a gunshot wound, her anger wasn't solely directed at Lil Tjay or the men in the valet area.
She was furious at the entire ecosystem of Offset's compulsion. She made it explicitly clear that this tension, this vulnerability, had been building for an agonizingly long time.
She paints a picture of a massive divide in their household priorities. She talked about how she was out doing exhaustive press runs for the Netflix show Rhythm Plus Flow.
Right, focused on building their corporate empire and securing their family's future.
And while she is operating at the highest level of the entertainment industry, she is forced to deal with these, as she labeled them, bitch-ass men playing incredibly dangerous street games with her family's safety.
In another source clip, she is heard yelling about the sheer chronological reality of his compulsion. She complains about Offset wanting to go to the casino at 10 a.m., screaming, "Let's get his money, baby."
I mean, think about the mechanics of a 10:00 a.m. casino run.
It's bleak.
That isn't a celebratory night out in Vegas after a successful consult. That isn't a social event with friends over cocktails.
A 10:00 a.m. trip to the casino floor is an overwhelming physiological compulsion. It is an addict waking up and needing a fix immediately.
Cardi B actually shared a highly specific anecdote that brilliantly illustrates the microscopic daily battles of managing this addiction.
Yes, we can refer to it as the safe money test.
This anecdote is fascinating because it shows how addiction erodes dignity. Offset calls Cardi B while he's actively playing at the casino.
He is out of money, and he demands that she bring him cash from her personal, secure safe at home.
And Cardi decides to use this request as a psychological test. Offset tells her to bring all of the cash from the safe.
So Cardi opens it, and she has stacks of $20 bills and stacks of $100 bills. And she makes a highly calculated decision.
She refuses to bring the 20s. She only brings him the hundreds, which amounts to exactly $3,000.
Now, why would she separate the denominations?
Why?
Because she is testing his threshold for public dignity. She inherently understands the optics of a high roller table.
Ah.
If a globally famous rapper pulls out massive bricks of $20 bills at a high-stakes table, it broadcasts desperation. It screams that you are scraping the bottom of the barrel.
So by only bringing the hundreds, she limits the total amount of money he can lose, while simultaneously testing if he is too far gone to care about how broke he looks.
Exactly. She brings him the $3,000, and he is sitting in the car, furiously counting it, desperate to rush right back into the casino.
But $3,000 is nothing compared to the scale of the losses detailed in another piece of source material.
No, it's not.
We have access to a transcript of a 40-minute drive where Offset is on the phone with his VIP host at the Hard Rock Casino. And this conversation is really the skeleton key to understanding his vulnerability.
To understand this phone call, we have to briefly explain the mechanics of casino credit. High rollers do not walk around with duffel bags of millions of dollars in physical cash.
Right.
Casinos issue them what is called a marker. It is effectively a short-term, interest-free line of credit, a countercheck. The casino evaluates your liquid assets, your real estate, your earning potential, and they grant you a credit limit.
But the danger of a marker is the psychological detachment it creates, right?
Totally. You aren't handing over physical cash.
Yeah.
You are just signing a piece of paper for plastic chips. It doesn't feel like real money until the trip is over.
And during this 40-minute drive, Offset is actively trying to expand his marker. He has that $3,000 in cash from Cardi, but he knows that won't even cover a few hands at his level of play.
So he is begging the VIP host for a massive extension on his credit line. The host tells him, I sent it higher, it's up in credit. But then the host delivers a serious dose of reality.
He asks Offset, do you want to know you're down this trip?
Offset agrees, and the host casually informs him that he's down $890,000.
Nearly $1 million. Gone. And Offset's immediate split-second reply, I need $500K more.
This is a textbook, clinical manifestation of a psychological phenomenon called chasing losses.
Chasing losses, yeah.
When a gambler hits a catastrophic loss, the logic center of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is completely hijacked by the amygdala and the brain's reward circuitry.
The gambler is no longer playing the game to win a profit.
No, they are frantically attempting to dig themselves out of a financial grave by digging the hole twice as deep.
The brain literally convinces them that the only cure for the agonizing pain of losing $890,000 is to borrow another $500,000 to win it all back in one miraculous hand.
It is a complete neurological trap.
And this destructive financial behavior isn't isolated to the flashing lights of the hard rock. The sources document this pattern bleeding into his personal life.
Yeah, a guest on DJ Academic's stream recounted an anecdote where Offset owed him $5,000 from a friendly Super Bowl bet.
Now, the guest laughed it off. He explained that $5,000 wasn't a life-altering amount of money for him, so he wasn't going to aggressively chase Offset down or initiate a massive beef over it.
But the sociological implication of that anecdote is massive. It establishes a documented behavioral pattern. Offset routinely places large bets, and allegedly, when he loses, he employs avoidance tactics instead of honoring the debt.
So if he is willing to stiff a casual acquaintance over a $5,000 sports bet, it lends an enormous amount of credibility to Lil Tjay's foundational claim.
That Offset lost $10,000 gambling, refused to pay, and was ducking him.
If we look at addiction through an analogy, think of a severe gambling compulsion as an invisible titanium tether wrapped around a person's waist.
Okay, I like that visual.
You might possess immense wealth. You might employ a massive security team. You might know, as an absolute undeniable fact, that there are people actively plotting to enact violence against you.
Basic human survival instinct should be screaming at you to stay in a gated mansion behind bulletproof glass.
But that invisible tether violently drags you right back to the casino floor. It pulls you into the exact public arena where your enemies know you will eventually show up.
The addiction fundamentally short-circuits the survival instinct.
It is a devastating vulnerability. But if we really want to understand the true lethal danger of Offset's gambling habits, we can't limit our analysis to heavily surveilled corporate casinos like the Seminole Hard Rock.
No, because as financially destructive as a corporate casino is, it is physically safe. To understand the physical danger, we have to examine the underground culture that the source material repeatedly points toward, the world of street dice games.
DJ Academic spent a significant portion of his commentary unpacking the dark, unglamorous reality of underground gambling within the hip-hop community.
We are stripping away the velvet ropes, the VIP hosts, and the security cameras, and we are stepping right onto the concrete.
Academics offers a remarkably blunt translation of this culture. He states plainly that in the hood, a dice game is often just slang for a robbery.
Slang for a robbery. That perfectly encapsulates the deception of the event.
It presents itself as a game of chance, but it is actually a premeditated ambush.
Academics even points to historical precedent within the industry, referencing a well-known alleged incident involving rappers Lil Baby and Offset that entirely stemmed from the fallout of a similar dice game.
Let's actually break down the physical mechanics of a street dice game because the geography and posture of the game itself are meticulously designed for maximum danger.
It's very different from a casino.
Unlike craps in a casino where you stand at a high felt-lined table with a dealer managing the chips, street games like CeeLo are played on the ground.
Think about the physical posture required. The players are crouched low to the floor, their heads bowed, intently focusing on the dice bouncing off a wall or rolling across a dirty floor.
Right. You are crouched on your heels, your physical mobility is severely restricted. Surrounding you on the concrete are massive piles of physical, untraceable cash.
You are in a crowded, poorly lit room or a blocked-off alleyway. You are shoulder to shoulder with strangers.
And the unspoken rule of this environment is that almost every single person standing above you, watching the money, is heavily armed.
It is a literal powder keg waiting for a spark. At any given moment, the entire dynamic of the room can shift violently.
A spectator can simply decide the pot has gotten large enough, draw a weapon, rob the entire circle, scoop the cash off the concrete, and vanish.
Or, in a more psychological twist, whoever possesses the most clout or localized street power in that specific neighborhood can start experiencing a losing streak.
And instead of accepting the loss, their ego takes over.
Right. They will simply lock the door and refuse to let anyone leave the room until they have won their money back. You are essentially held hostage by the pride of the most dangerous man in the room.
Which brings up a contradiction that completely baffled academics, and honestly, it baffles anyone looking at it objectively. Why do multi-millionaires engage in this?
It's a great question.
If you are a wealthy, successful recording artist, you have access to Las Vegas. In Vegas, the casino treats you like royalty.
You get VIP suites, Private cordoned-off gaming tables, Michelin star food, and an army of trained security guards ensuring nobody gets within 10 feet of you without permission.
It is a highly regulated, mathematically controlled environment designed to separate you from your money in the most comfortable, physically safe way possible.
But the answer to why they do it lies in the psychological trap of authenticity.
Authenticity, yeah.
When a globally successful artist returns to their hometown or visits certain historically dangerous neighborhoods in other cities, there is an immense, crushing cultural pressure to prove they haven't gone Hollywood.
They feel an intense obligation to seek out the local dangerous dice games, to pay a sort of hood tax, and maintain their street credibility.
They have to prove they are still fundamentally connected to the streets that birthed their music.
And insiders like academics claim that an estimated 75% of these underground games are blatant, coordinated scams specifically designed to drain these wealthy artists the moment they walk in the door.
So if you are listening to this, consider the sheer weight of that sociology.
Why do individuals who have utilized their immense talent to successfully escape impoverished, highly dangerous environments feel culturally mandated to return to those exact same environments?
Why risk your multi-million-dollar empire, your freedom, and your literal life just to roll dice on a concrete floor surrounded by guns?
It's survivor's guilt mixed with brand maintenance. The fear of being labeled a sellout is so profound that it drives people to override their own physical safety.
But while Offset's crippling addiction and his need for cultural credibility placed him in a uniquely vulnerable position at the casino, vulnerability alone does not spontaneously generate gunfire.
No, you can be vulnerable in a casino all day and never get shot.
It takes a very specific, highly combustible energy to escalate a digital dispute over a relatively tiny sum of money into actual, real-world gun violence.
To understand that missing ingredient, we have to examine the other half of this collision.
We have to pivot to Lil Tjay's history, because the shootout at the Seminole Hard Rock was not an isolated behavioral anomaly for him.
It wasn't a sudden break in character. If we want to comprehend the extreme escalation at the casino valet, we have to look at his documented track record.
And the sources paint a very clear picture of a young man with a history of escalating minor physical confrontations into major legal disasters.
The sources detail a recent, highly revealing lawsuit involving Lil Tjay at Madison Square Garden.
This is a crucial data point because of the environment. This wasn't a dark alley or an unregulated dice game. This was a highly regulated, intensely policed boxing event at one of the most famous arenas in the world.
According to the civil lawsuit, Lil Tjay was acting disruptively in the crowd. A police officer, working venue security, approached him using standard operating procedure to calmly escort him out of the building.
In any normal scenario, a celebrity being asked to leave a venue might argue briefly, but ultimately they walk out to avoid a scene.
But the reports claim TJ's reaction was instantly explosive. Instead of complying, he allegedly began screaming at the officer and then escalated immediately to physical violence, shoving the cop.
But it didn't end with a simple shove. The lawsuit alleges that TJ's entourage instantly swarmed the officer. They tackled him to the ground, with multiple bodies piling on top of him in a massive, chaotic brawl right there in the arena.
The medical consequences for that officer were devastating. The lawsuit details that he sustained life-altering spinal injuries from the weight of the swarm.
He reported suffering from chronic daily back and neck pain as a direct physical result of trying to manage a minor disruption.
And the lawsuit includes an incredibly disrespectful detail. It claims that during the sheer chaos of this brawl, TJ actively spat at a staff member.
Spitting on someone while your entourage crushes a police officer's spine shows a total fundamental disregard for authority.
It demonstrates a psychological leap straight past de-escalation and directly into maximum physical dominance.
And that MSG incident is just one data point in a larger timeline. When you examine TJ's rap sheet as outlined in the provided sources, a very distinct pattern involving firearms materializes.
The sources highlight an arrest in 2020 where law enforcement discovered weapons in a vehicle TJ was riding in.
But the most significant escalation occurred in 2023. During a music video shoot, which is supposed to be a controlled, professional working environment, police executed a raid on the location.
During their search, they uncovered an astonishing 15 firearms.
15?
Yes, and this discovery resulted in Lil Tjay being hit with 10 separate gun-related charges.
The source video capturing that 2023 arrest is highly illustrative of his baseline demeanor. You can see TJ interacting with the arresting officers, and his posture is intensely aggressive.
He is shouting at the police, repeatedly demanding, "Do not touch me, bro, do not touch me."
He is actively confrontational even as the handcuffs are being applied.
And to highlight the chaos of his operational structure, he was actually arrested again just days later simply because he failed to appear for a mandatory court date connected to that massive 15-gun case.
Now, to maintain our impartiality and look at the whole picture, we must note how his legal team responded to that.
Yes, we should.
They mounted a fierce defense, arguing that the police search of the video shoot was legally unjustified and maintaining that the 15 weapons found on set did not belong to Lil Tjay personally.
Which is standard legal strategy, but when you step back and aggregate the pattern, the brutal brawl at Madison Square Garden, the 2020 weapons arrest, the 2023 raid yielding an arsenal of guns, and then the valet shooting at the Hard Rock Casino, you are looking at a clear, undeniable trajectory.
You are looking at a person who consistently surrounds himself with extreme volatility and heavily armed associates.
And this requires us to dig into the underlying psychology of why his baseline response is so volatile. We have to address the elephant in the room, his trauma.
This is where the narrative gets incredibly complex. There is a piece of conventional wisdom that society likes to hold on to.
Right, we like to believe that if a person survives a horrific, near-death experience, it grants them a profound new appreciation for life.
We assume they will naturally seek peace, avoid drama, and distance themselves from the mechanisms of violence that almost killed them.
But Lil Tjay survived taking 6 bullets into his body years ago. And if you synthesize the commentary across our sources, industry insiders repeatedly note that Tjay has actually presented himself as much tougher, far more combative, and significantly more aggressive in the years since he was shot.
That observation fundamentally challenges our assumptions about recovery, but it aligns perfectly with the neuroscience of extreme trauma.
Tough.
Well, when a human being experiences lethal violence, when they are shot multiple times and their brain processes that they are dying, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is fundamentally altered.
Right. The brain's alarm system gets permanently jammed in the on position. Surviving extreme violence doesn't necessarily make you peaceful. In many cases, it actively normalizes violence.
The brain becomes rewired to believe that the entire world is an inherently lethal environment. And how does the body protect itself in a lethal environment?
It develops a hyper-aggressive defense mechanism.
Exactly. The sympathetic nervous system is trapped in a state of hypervigilance. Every perceived slight, whether it's a police officer asking you to leave an arena or a veteran rapper challenging you in a direct message, is processed by the brain, not as an annoyance, but as a literal life or death threat.
The behavioral response is to strike first, strike loudly, and to strike violently, to ensure you are never the victim lying bleeding on the ground ever again.
It is a preemptive survival tactic disguised as ego.
When you lay all these pieces on the table, the picture of what happened in Florida is no longer a mystery. You have Offset, a man whose severe, blinding gambling addiction strips away his basic survival instincts, repeatedly forcing him into highly public, unprotected spaces as he frantically chases almost $1 million in losses.
And on the exact opposite side, you have Lil Tjay, a young artist operating with a traumatized, hyper-aggressive defense mechanism, carrying a grievance over digital disrespect, and surrounded by an armed entourage ready to physically dominate any perceived threat.
When those two distinct pathologies walked into the valet area of the Seminole Hard Rock Casino, a violent explosion wasn't an accident.
It wasn't a random lightning strike. It was the tragic, mathematically inevitable result of their combined vulnerabilities.
We started this deep dive looking at a sensational headline about a shooting at a glamorous casino. To the untrained eye, it looked like a sudden chaotic blur of violence.
But by tracing the anatomy of the event through the source material, we discovered a meticulously layered collision.
We witnessed the collision of a seemingly petty $10,000 digital ego battle that metastasized into an attack on corporate brand equity, demanding a real-world resolution.
We explored the terrifying mechanics of a gambling addiction that led a wealthy artist to lose nearly $1 million and wander a casino alone, stripped of his dignity and security.
We unmasked the dangerous cultural trap of underground dice games that forces millionaires to risk their lives for street credibility.
And we analyzed how a historical pattern of gun violence permanently wired a survivor's brain to respond to digital disrespect with preemptive physical warfare.
It is the anatomy of a perfect, devastating storm. And as we wrap up our analysis, there is one final, profound variable that we have to address. We've spent this entire time dissecting the psychology of the artists, the mechanics of their addictions, and the lethal culture of their environment.
But we cannot ignore the massive invisible third party in this equation.
Right.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. Consider the role of the audience.
The fans.
Consider the millions of fans and followers who eagerly consumed the initial live stream, who eagerly screenshotted the degrading story about Offset begging for money, who hyped up the leaked, lethal DMs, and who voraciously searched for the valet footage of the brawl.
By treating very real threats of legal violence and deeply rooted destructive psychological addictions as our daily scrollable entertainment, does the digital crowd effectively trap these artists inside their personas?
That is the ultimate question. By cheering for the beef and demanding constant, unrelenting escalation for our amusement, does the audience ensure that their online posturing must inevitably end in real-world bloodshed, simply to satisfy the public's endless demand for so-called authenticity?
Are we just modern citizens cheering in a digital coliseum, demanding that real people bleed for our feeds?
It forces us to question not just why the artists act the way they do, but why we require them to do so.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this extensive analysis provided you with a completely new lens through which to view the mechanics of these headlines. Keep analyzing the structures behind the culture, keep looking past the sensationalism, and keep questioning the narratives you are fed. We will see you next time.